forensic psychology. Jennifer, you've been following the Daybell case, the investigation, and then, of course, the new developments that happened last week with the discovery of these two sets of remains, now confirmed to be those of J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan. Can you give us a little bit of background as to what happens once those remains, obviously not this specific case, but generally when remains are collected and taken to a crime lab or a medical examiner?
The bodies are generally a wealth of information. So to start with, you're at the gravesite where you have to recover the bodies in a way that you will make sure you maximize the gain of any evidence you might have. So the gravesite itself is a very meticulous operation. You need to go through the gravesite from, almost like scoopful by scoopful of dirt to make sure there's nothing that you miss. And so, they're going to do that very, very systematically, starting, with the top layer and moving their way down very slowly, layer by layer. They're going to go to the outside, underneath, and on top of the body recovery site, so that anything that's in there that has actually come from the body or may have been put into the gravesite by the person that buried them or killed them can be recovered. So that's the first step. It's a very meticulous process, and you're looking for anything for parts of the body. You don't want to miss any parts of the body recovery, but you might be looking for weapons, what was used to actually kill the children. And you also will be looking for anything that might tie that gravesite back to the person who put them in it. So that could be plastic bags, tape, fibers, hair, any sort of debris that could be linked back to a person. So that's the first thing that has to happen.
Jennifer, I think a lot of people were surprised how quickly the process moved the other day. They served the search warrant around 7 a.m. Chad Daybell was then arrested within a few hours, and then they were able to confirm by mid-afternoon that they had found these remains. This obviously, I would imagine, indicates that the remains were not buried deep in the earth, or that they knew exactly where they were going, or both.
Yeah, I would agree with you. It appeared to me that they used cadaver dogs. I don't know that for sure, but that's what it looks like. And cadaver dogs are trained specifically to recognize the scent of bodies. So if you have a fairly large property, like in this particular case, and you have cadaver dogs, they can narrow down that site where the bodies are buried very quickly. Once you have that location, that very narrow location, and then it's just a matter of doing the excavation to get down to the bodies. Once you have access to the bodies, depending upon the condition of the bodies, how decomposed they may or may not have been, what the children were wearing, any sort of identifying jewelry or marks on the bodies, they may be able to identify the bodies fairly quickly at that point.
The bodies were then there. The remains were then taken to Boise, where they did an autopsy. And on Saturday, police did officially confirm that it was the children. Does that indicate to you that they were still recognizable, or I guess they may have obtained their dental records or things like that? The fact that they were able to ID them so quickly.
Probably. That could come from clothing, it could come from jewelry, and then certainly dental records are what's used often to identify bodies. And I don't know what the condition of the bodies were. If they were still in relatively good condition, then certainly some of the physical features of size, stature, hair, etc., might have been identifying features for the family. Oftentimes, that's confirmed with dental records, however.
What does it tell you, the fact that these bodies were buried right outside Chad Daybell's back door?
Well, I don't know what that tells you. It's, you wonder how long they were there, and it's frustrating that they might have been there for a long time and the family didn't know for months at end. But at the end of the day, the investigators on this case, they have to lay out a very meticulous case for a search warrant. They have to be able to convince a judge that they have enough probable cause to go onto someone's property and start digging in their backyard. And that's not easy to do. It shouldn't be easy to do, and it isn't. And if they don't do that correctly and take their time and make sure that search warrant is ready to go, then the things that they collect at that crime scene might not be able to be used in a court of law, and that would be tragic. So I imagine these investigators took their time to be very, very systematic in their approach and very thorough, so that a judge would sign that search warrant and they could go to that property and recover whatever evidence they needed in order to make this case, which is very important.
Jennifer, we know that Chad Daybell's been charged with destruction of evidence. There have not yet been any murder or manslaughter or more serious charges. Any idea as to why that is?
Well, you need to charge to the level that you know that you can achieve when you go to a jury trial. So often they'll start with a lower charge that they know they can make, and then as the investigation goes on, they're going to add charges. Just because the bodies were found on his property does not mean that he killed the children. It doesn't mean that he helped kill the children. It doesn't even mean he was an accessory to killing the children. It means that the children were on his property, and they must have some evidence of some sort of destruction of evidence in order to even to charge him with that. So it's unfortunately, these things they take a really long time. It oftentimes takes months and months, if not years, to get to a trial where you have all of the evidence you need to really have a very strong case. So I imagine once the investigation's gone on and they've been able to come up with some more information, then they'll look at charging him with the actual murder. Whether that happens or not, we'll just have to wait and find out.
That's one of the key words through all of this, that law enforcement, prosecutors, everybody says is patience. Patience. This is not a TV show.
Right. Yes, I've dealt with that for many years in my life. Why does it take so long to do DNA? Can't you just get it done in an hour? And of course you cannot.
Sure. Which is another question about Tammy Daybell's autopsy, which has she died in October. Her body was exhumed in December. Here we are in June. Is it common for an autopsy to take this long?
Well, that's another, that depends as well. It depends on how complex the autopsy is. And if you're looking at a body and you're really wondering what, it seems to me in that case that they might be looking for poisons or toxins of some sort. And that kind of work can take a really long time because they have to do the collection, they have to send it out to another laboratory that actually does that kind of work. And depending upon backlogs, etc., it just takes a while. And the more complex the poisons or toxins you might be looking for, or the body chemistry that you might be trying to understand, the longer it takes. They're not just quick tests that you can do immediately. They just take longer. And unfortunately, a lot of those laboratories have lots and lots of cases to work. So, these things take time, but at the end of the day, you want to make sure that the work is done is absolutely perfect and thorough and can be used to prosecute the person responsible for the crime.
Jennifer, I would imagine as the head of the crime lab in San Diego that you saw a bunch of crazy cases. I hate to put an extreme. Is this the most extreme case you've ever seen? But I will ask, have you seen a case like this?
I've seen some pretty extreme cases, but this one to me is the complexity of the amount of people involved and the length of time involved. I've actually never seen anything quite like it, I would say. And just, I've been following it for a while, just having these two children having disappeared and the mom being somewhat cavalier about that. It's kind of mind-blowing as a mom, I would have to say. But yeah, the number of deaths involved, they're all sort of suspicious. It's really interesting, and I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it.
All right, Jennifer, is there anything you want to add? Anything we didn't touch on?
I just want to say that these investigations are very, very difficult, and the work that needs to be done both by the medical examiner and then the follow-up work that will be done by the forensic scientists it's very time consuming, and we as forensic scientists have to make sure that every single thing we do is absolutely vetted and it's absolutely thorough and the results are absolutely 100% correct, because we know that when we go into court and talk to a jury that people's lives are at stake, and so that can't be rushed. It has to be done very carefully. So it will take a while, and it will be very frustrating to wait for those results. But when they come, and they can put together a case, and they can hold people responsible who did this terrible thing, then that wait will have been worth it.
And I know there's a lot more to come because there's a lot we don't know. So we'll discover that along with everybody. But Jennifer Shen, thank you very much for joining us again. Jennifer is the former head of the San Diego Crime Lab. She currently teaches forensic psychology in California. Nice having you here, Jennifer. Thank you.